Greetings, wanderers. Tonight, we drift back to the Middle Ages, a time when simply being a little different, just unlucky or too lucky could get you branded a witch. This was an age of superstition and suspicion, when even the most ordinary things like having a cat, knowing how to read, or baking decent bread could make you the talk of the village for all the wrong reasons. If you enjoy these gentle journeys through history, you are welcome to like and subscribe, but only if it feels right for you. And while you are still conscious, do leave a comment. Tell me where in the world you are listening from and what time it is there. It is always a delight to see where these stories find you. Now, let us settle in, dim the lights, and begin this bedside journey into the past together. During the medieval period, it didn't take much to end up on the village's most suspicious list. Let's start with the easiest thing to get you noticed, just being yourself. Suppose you're born with a birthmark, something totally ordinary. In your world, a birthmark is just weird skin pigment that happened because blood vessels didn't form correctly. In theirs, it's the ultimate icebreaker for a witch trial. Imagine a council of worried neighbors squinting at your ankle, deciding if that funny shape is an accident or a map to hell. Official witch hunters sometimes stripped accused women in public and pointed at every mole, convinced these were signs you'd signed up with the devil himself. Now, if your hair is red, that's an instant suspicion. Most people around you are shades of brown or blonde. If you show up with a copper halo, it's almost as if you've chosen to star in your own accusations. In Scotland, Germany, and England, being a redhead could make you a curiosity at best or a prime candidate for the next round of finger-pointing. Medieval Europe had their own version of the redheads have no soul joke, except it wasn't really a joke. Ginger discrimination has a long history. Left-handed, welcome to the sinister club. That's right. The word sinister literally means left in Latin. That's not a joke. Just using your left hand to write could get whispers going. Teachers and priests in many places would force children to switch hands. If you were left-handed and your bread didn't rise, the two events might just mysteriously become related. Physical differences didn't help. Let's say you were born with two different colored eyes. In the 21st century, your doctor would call that a genetic mutation called heterochromia. Back then, it was a plot twist, an extra finger or toe. Even rarer and even more suspect. If you were especially tall or short, you'd stick out like a sore thumb in every town gathering. With no knowledge of genetics, villagers looked for supernatural explanations because apparently, she just grew that way wasn't satisfying. Your birthday could haunt you too, born during a thunderstorm or an eclipse. Bad luck. In some regions, being born on certain feast days or the wrong phase of the moon was enough for lifelong side-eye. The local midwife might mutter about ominous timing. It didn't help that if anything unlucky ever happened, like a fire or a hailstorm, folks would double-check which children were born that week just in case. Picture getting seriously ill. The odds of making it through the plague or a high fever weren't great for anyone. If you were one of the rare survivors, it could be a mixed blessing. Today, we'd chalk it up to genetics, luck, or a strong immune system. In the Middle Ages, people thought something must be helping you, and they probably didn't mean Jesus. Most likely the other guy. You know who. Surviving a disease that killed your neighbors was enough to make people uneasy, and sometimes just recovering was suspicious in itself. Having any kind of visible disability or injury, maybe a limp, a crooked spine, or a missing eye, could draw even more scrutiny. If your gait was unusual or you looked different, people would notice, and not in a friendly way. In a tight-knit village, everyone knew everyone's business and differences got magnified. When disaster struck, it was often the odd ones out who ended up with blame, simply because their uniqueness was easy to remember. Family history could make things worse. If someone in your family, an aunt, a cousin, or your grandmother had been suspected or accused before, you started life with a permanent asterisk by your name. Villagers sometimes believed witch blood ran in families, and gossip traveled farther and faster than any horse. Having twins could be a blessing or a curse. In some communities, giving birth to twins was celebrated, but in others, it was regarded as unnatural. Some people whispered about bargains with spirits or the supernatural. If your twins were sickly or you lost one and the other survived, the superstitions only got louder. Forget about human twins, you crack an egg and got two yolks, people look at you funny back then. Let's talk about eyes. Maybe yours are unusually blue or so dark they seem black in candlelight. Perhaps you've got a piercing stare that makes people uncomfortable. It doesn't take much for an ordinary gaze to be reinterpreted as seeing more than she should. If you ever tried to cover up an unusual mark, it only made people more curious. The simple act of pulling down your sleeve could launch 100 rumors. Even aging could work against you. If you looked far older than your years, weathered by sun, hard work, or genetics, people might guess you were being punished for secret sins. If you seemed much younger than your age, that could be proof of unnatural means. There were no birth certificates to check, just whatever your neighbors guessed and what they wanted to believe. And timing, as always, mattered. If you suddenly developed a new mole or mark right after a bad harvest or a neighbor's tragedy, that detail could take on a life of its own. Never mind that your body just does what bodies do, people needed explanations. And if you didn't fit the village average, you'd become the explanation. All these little quirks, birthmarks, red hair, handedness, scars, family stories, even the phase of the moon on your birthday, could put you at the center of suspicion. No science, no genetics, no just because. Just a crowd of nervous villagers looking for patterns and ready to find one on your skin. In the end, the greatest medieval sin might have been standing out from the crowd. If you are the kind of person who talks to your pets, you might want to sit down for this part. In the Middle Ages, your relationship with animals could land you in hot water faster than you can say, "Who's a good boy?" Let's start with the classic. Owning a black cat was basically a medieval red flag. While today a black cat just means you have good taste, back then people whispered that they were witches' familiars. If a black cat showed up at a sick man's doorstep, people might start preparing his last rites. If your cat had the audacity to cross the road at the wrong time, your neighbors might cross themselves. Cats, especially black ones, were linked to bad luck, the devil, and all manner of mysterious happenings. The reputation of black cats as omens of doom is basically the cockroach of superstitions. It refuses to die even in today's world. Toads, frogs, and other unusual pets made things worse. Today, a pet frog might make you quirky. In the Middle Ages, keeping a toad was like keeping a tiny, warty demon in your apron pocket. If a villager spotted you talking to your frog or feeding it, the story would get stranger with every retelling. Sometimes, animals that just happened to hang around your house could be turned into evidence. Feeding strays, that was suspicious, too. It did not matter if you just had a soft spot for hungry animals. Villagers might claim you were attracting animal helpers for your magical work. If a stray animal followed you for any reason, that was worth a side-eye or two. If you happened to be outside during an odd animal event, like a flock of birds landing on your roof, you were definitely the new talk of the town. Talking to animals, even your own pets, could land you in trouble. Today, people narrate their dog's inner thoughts on TikTok for millions of views. Back then, if anyone overheard you chatting with your animals, it might look like you were casting a spell. The more the animal seemed to understand you, the worse it looked. If you were the local dog whisperer, that was one secret best kept to yourself. Birds, especially crows or ravens, brought a whole new level of suspicion. Maybe you just liked to watch the birds at the edge of the woods, or you fed the crows your old bread. In medieval logic, crows were considered omens or spies. If a bird seemed to visit your house often, you could be accused of sending messages with it. Sometimes, all it took was a bird cawing at the wrong time for someone to say, "Did you hear that?" That's a sign. People really did believe in animal spies. If someone claimed you sent your dog to keep watch on their property, you would be hard-pressed to prove otherwise. Pet dogs could even get dragged into court as evidence. In rare but real cases, animals were put on trial alongside their owners. If your animal survived a sickness or an accident that killed others, that was suspicious, too. Maybe your flock stayed healthy when others lost half their chickens. Maybe your dog came back from a wolf attack with barely a scratch. Instead of congratulating you or your pet on their survival skills, your neighbors would wonder what kind of spell you had up your sleeve. Unusual pets like a parrot were particularly risky. Today, that is a party trick. Back then, a talking animal could only mean one thing: witchcraft. And if your animals ever showed up at odd times or made a ruckus during a village disaster, people made connections that had nothing to do with logic. Let's not forget animal remains. If you collected feathers, bones, or kept odd trinkets that included animal parts, you could be accused of brewing up trouble. In a world without science kits or nature crafts, people got suspicious fast. Pet names could even be a problem. If you named your cat something foreign or your dog's name sounded like a spell, people would add that to their mental list of evidence. The less they understood your choices, the more sure they were that something fishy was going on. To put it simply, be mindful of what you show affection to, or it could easily land you in court for a witch trial. And court back then did not mean due process. Most of the time, it meant being tortured until you confessed. In the Middle Ages, music and dance were not just entertainment. They were tightly woven into religion, ritual, and community. The wrong song at the wrong time could get you more than a bad review. It might land you on the shortlist for a witch trial. Dancing in a circle at night was not the medieval version of a rave. It was more like sending out RSVP for the witches' meetup. And if your Spotify playlist had too many folk ballads, you were definitely on the radar. Dancing in a ring, especially after dark or outside church events, was a direct ticket to the rumor mill. Medieval Europe was filled with stories that witches met in secret and danced with the devil. If you enjoyed a moonlit jig or taught the children to dance in a ring, that innocent joy could be twisted into proof you were practicing forbidden arts. Dancing during certain festivals or on unholy days, especially outside church supervision, was considered a sure sign of witchcraft in many regions. Playing the drums or pipes outside church was like blasting heavy metal in a library. Instead of getting shushed, you got suspicious glances and maybe a personal sermon from the local priest. Musicians were not safe either. Playing pagan instruments like fiddles, drums, or pipes outside of church events was enough for some to whisper about your allegiances. In some places, bagpipes and drums were considered tools for summoning spirits or gathering witches. If your music sounded different or made people feel strange, it was easy for the church or jealous neighbors to suggest you had help from something dark. Singing the wrong songs could also land you in trouble. Ballads and folk songs not approved by the church were sometimes considered witches' songs. There are real records of people being accused of teaching children the wrong tunes or singing during storms or funerals, because it was believed witches could call the wind, summon spirits, or disrupt religious order through song. Even refusing to sing or dance was dangerous. There is no winning with superstitious people. Villages expected everyone to join the group, especially at church feasts or major festivals. If you stood off to the side and declined, it could be seen as a rejection of Christian fellowship. Rumors could quickly shift from "she's odd" to "she's working against us." In several regions, this was the first step toward formal accusations of witchcraft or heresy. Sometimes, too much joy was a problem. If your gatherings got too lively, villagers didn't call the cops, they called the priest. If your parties or gatherings were louder or more spirited than your neighbors, people wondered what powered the fun. Was it just good cider, or was it something from the old world, something you were not supposed to have? Old superstitions claimed witches drew power from laughter and dancing, especially late at night. Not all suspicion required direct evidence. If a storm ruined crops after someone in the village played a strange tune or led a dance in the fields, blame quickly shifted from weather to witchcraft. Some regions had specific stories about witches calling storms with music and song. Teaching children new games, especially those that involved odd rhythms or chanting, could make you a suspect as well. Children who played witches' games or sang non-church songs were sometimes used as witnesses in accusations. Your love of keeping the kids busy could backfire in a big way. Sneaking away during a festival was not just an introvert move. It basically announced you had a part-time gig at the witches' Sabbath. Real witch trials included testimony about people missing during communal events, only to reappear with new knowledge, strange tokens, or a suspicious smile. You might just have gone for a nap, but medieval logic was less forgiving. And if the dancing ever got out of hand, like in the famously mysterious dancing plagues of Strasbourg or Aachen, the first people blamed were those who already seemed odd or outside the social norm. She started the dancing, she must have bewitched us all. On this one, it is hard to blame them. Even modern science cannot pin it down as just mass hysteria. To a medieval mind, witchcraft actually made perfect sense. In short, music and dance were never just music and dance. In the Middle Ages, the wrong tune or the wrong step could mean your neighbors saw you not as the life of the party, but as the latest witch in their midst. In a time when superstition reigned, it did not take much to be the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. Village life ran on tradition, and festivals were the moments when everyone watched everyone else. When things went wrong, whether it was a bad harvest, a sudden illness, or a ruined celebration, people searched for answers. The truth is, the line between part of the group and potential witch was ridiculously thin, and superstition ruled every corner of village life. If you were already seen as an outsider, you were on even shakier ground. May Day was a highlight of the calendar, with maypoles, flowers, and songs. But if you woke up early to gather lucky plants or seemed to know which herbs to pick for the best wreaths, people might wonder where you got your knowledge. It did not matter if you learned it from your grandmother or just liked flowers. A neighbor might decide you were sneaking out to collect ingredients for a spell. In a world where every unexplained skill could be seen as suspicious, even being good at weaving garlands could work against you. It is like being the person who brings homegrown kale to a potluck. Impressive now, suspicious then. Midsummer festivals were meant to keep away evil, but even these traditions were full of pitfalls. Lighting the bonfire, singing the loudest, or being the first to toss herbs into the flames made you stand out. If there was bad weather afterward or someone got sick, people connected the dots, whether the dots made sense or not. Sometimes it was just about being noticed. The person with the biggest smile or the loudest voice became the easiest person to blame. Every region had its own rituals. Some families decorated their homes with more branches or charms than others, while some skipped traditions altogether. Both choices were risky. Go all in, and people accused you of trying too hard or hiding something. Do less, and they wondered if you were rejecting the community on purpose. There was no perfect answer except to never stand out. Food and drink were another minefield. If your festival pie or bread tasted different, or if you brought a new recipe, people were curious. But if anyone felt sick later, your cooking suddenly became suspicious. These days, you might just get a bad Yelp review. Back then, you could be branded as the local pie witch. Even sharing a lucky charm or a treat could go wrong. If a neighbor had bad luck after using your gift, your generosity became evidence against you. And refusing to eat someone else's food was just as bad. It made people wonder if you knew something about the dish, something no one else did. Children loved festivals, but teaching them new games or songs could be risky if they were not church-approved. Parents listened for strange words or tunes, and a single odd rhyme could spread suspicion quickly. If a group of children played a new game and bad luck followed, the finger often pointed at the adult who taught it to them. Inventing the next viral dance was not always a good thing in the Middle Ages. Sometimes it just got you a reputation for witchy influence. Visitors and travelers made things even more complicated. Welcoming outsiders during a festival could be seen as friendly or as dangerous. If you were seen walking with a stranger at night or talking quietly at the edge of the celebration, people started to wonder what you were really up to. Rituals like jumping over bonfires, running races, or singing special songs were supposed to bring good luck. But if you jumped higher than anyone else or seemed to know the words better, it could backfire. Anything that made you memorable could also make you a target. That tipping point could come fast. At first, these were just the whispers and nervous glances of a suspicious village. But all it took was a single misfortune, a sudden fire, a child's fever, spoiled food, or a terrible storm after the festival, for suspicion to tip into something more dangerous. People remembered who stood out, who acted differently, who knew too much, or who brought something new. In that moment, suspicion hardened into certainty. Someone would finally say it out loud, "She must have brought this upon us. She's a witch. Congratulations, you've just been voted off the island," medieval style. From that point, the talk was no longer behind your back. The accusations came, and with them, real danger. In a time obsessed with omens and superstition, blending in was the safest choice. Festivals brought the whole village together, but they also made it frighteningly easy to become the next person everyone talked about, and the next person called a witch. In the Middle Ages, being good at healing or helping was as risky as being unlucky. Midwives, herbalists, and anyone with too much skill in medicine lived under a cloud of suspicion, especially when village life was hit by tragedy or change. If you were already an outsider, it took even less to turn neighborly doubt into open accusation. Midwives were often blamed for birth defects or difficult deliveries. Today, we know these are genetic or the result of illness. Back then, a crooked limb or birthmark meant the midwife let something evil in or meddled with fate. If a baby arrived with a problem, what should have been a hard luck story became the beginning of a witch rumor. Herbal remedies were everywhere, and most cures were passed down by word of mouth. Sometimes your teas and poultices worked wonders, sometimes nothing helped. If your cold medicine actually worked, you might as well have called it witch's brew. But when a sick neighbor recovered while others did not, gratitude quickly turned to gossip. It's not natural, no one else could help. If you healed a case everyone else gave up on, your success was proof of magic. If your patient died, your mixture was suddenly the poison that killed them. Women's health and childbirth were full of risk. Knowledge of herbs and remedies helped with pain, childbirth, and family planning. But if a child was born at the wrong time or a woman failed to conceive, blame was quick. Sometimes all it took was a neighbor muttering, "She must have done something," and a bit of bad luck to turn worry into accusation. Blessing babies and mothers with charms, prayers, or little amulets was tradition for many. But if something went wrong after a blessing, a child grew sick, or a mother died, the blessing itself became proof you had cursed them. Curing the incurable was a double-edged sword. When the doctor or priest gave up and you brought someone back from the brink, the miracle became a mark of suspicion. You were either a miracle worker or the reason things went sideways. If your patient surprised everyone and survived, people began to ask what sort of power you really had. Herbal teas, amulets, and lucky tokens were in every healer's kit. Today we call some of it the placebo effect, but back then, if you wore a charm and got lucky, it was seen as evidence of a pact with something unnatural. Teaching others your remedies or passing down old recipes was just education. But when someone you taught made a mistake, blame bounced back to you. Rivalries between healers or midwives sometimes ended with accusations in the village square, especially when competition got personal. Medieval small-town drama. Less reality TV, more real witch trials. If your home was lined with jars, bottles, and bunches of dried plants, you looked like a wise woman, or you looked like a witch. To us, it's just an apothecary. In the Middle Ages, people wondered if you were brewing up your next hex. It's the original cottagecore, but your Instagram followers are all suspicious neighbors. If you helped a sick neighbor who was expected to die and they recovered, people were quick to say you changed fate. If you helped and they died, you were blamed for finishing them off. Kindness sometimes brought jealousy. Helping a neighbor for free could make others envious or resentful, especially if your patient improved. If someone else's treatment failed, your good deed was twisted against you. When healing was slow or a recovery failed, grumbling started. She promised a cure, nothing happened. If bad luck hit the village, all eyes turned to the person who knew too much. Trusted by outsiders, known in nearby villages, or working for both rich and poor, your reputation meant you had secrets. All these little suspicions piled up. It could take only one tragedy, a fever that spread, a string of deaths, or a child lost in the night for people to snap. Whispers became loud voices. She cursed us. She's a witch. By the time the accusations began, your years of skill and service became a list of reasons why you had to be stopped. In a world where superstition ruled and medicine was mystery, being too good was almost as dangerous as being too bad. It's one thing to be unlucky in a superstitious village, but being clever could be just as dangerous. Sometimes, having a sharp mind or a rare talent was all it took to land you on the suspicious list. If you could sign your name, copy a letter, or keep records, people wondered where you learned it. School wasn't a thing for peasants, not for a few more centuries, so it was just natural for people around you to wonder where you picked up such rare skills. Had you been taught by someone or by something unusual? In today's world, you'd be surprised to find someone who can't read or write. In the Middle Ages, you might just get your name on a watch list for being able to do so. Inventing new tools or clever gadgets was another way to trigger suspicion. You invent something new today and you patent it. Back then, it was smarter to keep it to yourself. That new plow, strange-looking lock, or water-carrying bucket might save time, but if it broke or made a weird noise, people wondered what powered it. They might even poke it with a stick, just to see if it moved on its own. Predicting the weather by reading clouds or feeling changes in the air was a simple trick of observation. But if you warned people to bring in their laundry and it rained, you must know something. Today, your neighbor might wonder whether you are a meteorologist. In the Middle Ages, people would think you were a witch who could see the future. Explaining nature, why the river floods, why birds migrate, or why an eclipse darkens the sky, was a sign of curiosity to us, but to some, it was unsettling. Knowledge that couldn't be explained by a priest was often explained by rumors instead. Being too smart had its own risks. If you always had an answer, solved puzzles quickly, or bested others in a debate, it could spark jealousy or resentment. If people didn't understand you, it was easier for them to believe you were dangerous. Teaching reading, writing, or math to others was progress in disguise. But if children started using strange marks or doing sums faster than their parents, people wondered if you were teaching something more than numbers and letters. Keeping records or taking notes could also raise suspicion. If you kept a tidy book of recipes, made lists of household items, or wrote down the moon's phases, some people saw it as practical. Others squinted at your neat handwriting and whispered about spellbooks. Arguing with priests or local leaders was a dangerous game. Healthy debate or asking tough questions could get you branded a troublemaker. Disagree with church teachings once too often, and the jump from skeptic to heretic or witch happened fast. If you picked up knowledge from outsiders, travelers, or traders, maybe a new recipe, a better tool, or a few words in another language, people took note. The more you talked about what you learned elsewhere, the more you stood out as different. Using big words or foreign phrases set you apart. Sometimes, the more educated you sounded, the more people wondered if you were hiding a spell in plain sight. Sharing odd recipes or new cooking tricks could be a red flag. If your stew tasted different or your bread rose higher, people might want your secrets or accuse you of putting something extra in the mix. Repairing broken tools or fixing things others could not was a sign of handiness. But when your repairs lasted longer than expected, or you made something work too well, people joked that you must have charmed it. Keeping your methods private, protecting your sources, or guarding a special trick are nothing more than proper business practice in the modern world. In the Middle Ages, though, people saw it as proof you were hiding something suspicious. If you did not share your secrets, they assumed you had something to hide, and maybe that something was witchcraft. All these quirks and clever habits might seem harmless until the day something went wrong in the village. If a fire broke out, if a neighbor's cow dropped dead, or if the weather ruined the harvest, people remembered who was different, who knew too much, and who had ideas nobody else understood. Jealousy and bad luck could turn curiosity into fear and fear into accusation. You started as the clever one, but when trouble struck, you ended up the witch. There's nothing like a medieval church for neighborly surveillance. If you slipped up on anything remotely religious, people noticed. Being different in faith or habit was enough to get the rumor mill spinning fast. Missing Mass was the biggest red flag of all. Maybe you were sick, maybe you had crops to tend, maybe you just lost track of time, not a big deal in 21st century. You might get a text from a well-meaning friend checking in on you. In the Middle Ages, it could get you a knock from the local priest, or worse, a visit from the gossipy Karen with the best memory in town. Praying with an accent could make things even trickier. If you muttered the Our Father in your mother tongue, or even just tripped over Latin, people stared. Sometimes just sounding different was enough to put you under the wrong spotlight. Making the sign of the cross the wrong way, left instead of right, too fast, too slow, with extra flourishes, set off alarms. Some thought you'd learned it from outsiders or maybe from a suspicious ancestor. Questioning the priest or grumbling about church taxes was a fast track to the top of the suspicion list. Sure, nobody likes paying extra for pew space, but in the Middle Ages, asking where the money went made it look like you were challenging holy authority, and that wasn't very God-fearing of you. There was no such thing as transparency back then, and congratulations, you just committed heresy and earned yourself a spot on the potential witch list. Skipping confession or communion didn't win you any friends either. Maybe you just liked your privacy or you had nothing to confess. Still, if you sat out too often, people wondered what you were hiding. Old relics and non-approved tokens like your grandmother's necklace or a tiny carved charm might have been family treasures. But if it wasn't church-approved, it could easily be labeled a witch's trinket. Praying in the woods was risky too. Some people found peace outdoors, but if you went too often or at odd hours, it looked suspicious. The villagers figured you were either hiding, plotting, or making a pact with something that wasn't holy. Owning books in Latin was a big deal. Most people couldn't read a grocery list, let alone a religious text. Having a Latin prayer book that no one else in your neighborhood understood didn't help your case. Sure, it could mean you were educated, but peasants like you weren't supposed to have education, and you didn't look noble, no matter how hard you tried. So there was only one thing left to assume. You were dabbling in secrets with something ancient and dark. Not fasting when everyone else did was frowned upon. Maybe you had a heavy workload, maybe you were just hungry, maybe you were sick. Either way, people kept track of who skipped the ritual fasts. If you looked a little too healthy during Lent, they noticed. If you cursed at a priest after a heated argument, you were playing with fire. Even if you apologized, people remembered. Any misfortune that happened later, sick livestock, a thunderstorm, even a stubbed toe could be traced back to your angry words. A non-standard baptism, like a homemade ceremony or skipping steps, drew serious suspicion. If you said, "It's a family custom," people just wondered what else your family did differently. Skipping processions or church festivals might have been a matter of other duties or forgetfulness, but it was never forgotten. The more you missed, the more people whispered. Ignoring feast days, whether by accident or just bad timing, was another red flag. If you worked on a holy day, even by mistake, you stuck out. If people gossiped about festival pacts, it meant someone thought you'd struck a bargain with the wrong side during a big church event. It didn't matter if it was just a rumor. Once your name was in the story, it was hard to take it out. Quick recovery from illness didn't win you much peace either. Today, bouncing back from a bad flu on your own just means your immune system is strong enough to fight it off. But back then, it was suspicious. People wondered what power protected you from the cursed illness, and if you weren't really religious, they assumed the worst. They wondered whether you were serving the other guy and your protection from sickness was part of the bargain. Religion in the medieval world wasn't just about faith. It was about belonging, being seen, and following the unwritten rules. Step out of line, and before you knew it, your habits and holidays were being used as evidence, maybe even at your own trial. Being a collector is just a hobby in today's world. The more peculiar your collection, the more fascinating it is to others. In the Middle Ages, however, the wrong collection could get you in trouble. Villagers believed that the things you owned could reveal your secrets or even your soul. The line between interesting and witchy was paper-thin, and that exotic-looking cauldron on your table only made it worse. Mirrors, crystals, and shiny stones could brighten a dark house or make great conversation starters. But having too many or using them at odd times might be suspicious. Today, a mirror collection is just good light and better selfies. In the Middle Ages, it could mean you were summoning spirits every time you checked your hair. Amulets and talismans were common for good luck or protection. If you wore a little pouch on a string or carried a carved charm, most people thought nothing of it. If your neighbor's luck turned bad, however, that amulet might suddenly look like a curse in disguise. Spinning wheels, looms, and weaving supplies were just part of everyday work. But someone always noticed if your fabric patterns were a bit too strange or your thread never seemed to run out. Too much skill or a design nobody had seen before was enough to spark a rumor. Candles, incense, and bundles of herbs hung in the rafters made a house smell fresh and kept away pests. If your home was a little too fragrant, though, or if you burned herbs at odd hours, people wondered if you were covering up more than bad air. A Yankee Candle habit is harmless today. Back then, it was practically an open invitation for suspicion. Drawings, doodles, and little runes scratched on doors or fence posts could be art, a lucky sign, or just boredom. If something unlucky happened after you drew a design, people said you'd marked the house on purpose. Books with illustrations were rare treasures. A book with pictures meant you could learn about animals, plants, or far-off places. If nobody else could read it, people whispered about spellbooks or secret codes. A coffee table book today gets a compliment. In the Middle Ages, it got you on a watch list. Writing letters, practicing fancy writing, or using Latin was education for some and proof of unusual knowledge for others. If your letters left the village, people asked who you were talking to. If you used Latin, they wondered why you were using the language of scholars and priests. Bottles filled with unknown liquids or powders were just home remedies most of the time. If someone got sick or something smelled funny, those bottles became the top suspects. Foreign coins or jewelry showed that you or your family had traveled or traded far from home. To some, it was a sign of worldliness. To others, it was proof you brought strange magic back with you. Today, it's a travel souvenir. In the Middle Ages, it was evidence. Non-church relics or souvenirs from other places could make a shelf look interesting, but if you displayed anything not blessed by the local priest, it was easy to call it a witch's trinket. A rock from a sacred spring or a statue from another town might invite more gossip than admiration. Soap and perfume were about hygiene, but if your house was the only one that smelled nice, people wondered what you were trying to cover up. Being too clean or smelling too good was suspicious in a time when everyone else tried not to. In the modern world, unusual spices in your food mean culinary creativity. "My compliments to the chef," one of your guests might say with admiration. But in the Middle Ages, serving unusual food was like playing Russian roulette. If you were lucky, people would simply ask where you got those flavors and think nothing more of it. But it wasn't uncommon for them to believe you were trying to cast a spell on their stomachs. That's how your hospitality could get you on a witch shortlist. Hidden pouches, tucked away boxes, or locked chests were just private. But if someone peeked and saw anything unusual, your need for privacy quickly became a sign of guilt. Magical crafts were just art, hobbies, or family traditions. But if you were the only one making dolls, paper stars, or folded birds, people wondered if your creativity was a cover for something supernatural. Being crafty was a talent. In the wrong company, it was a risk. When the villagers were on edge, all it took was a single odd object, a trinket out of place, or a misunderstood hobby for curiosity to turn into suspicion and suspicion to become an accusation. In a world where every belonging was a possible clue, your shelf could become your evidence shelf. So it's finally happened. The whispers have become accusations, and now you're standing in the center of a medieval witch trial. It's a show for the whole village, and everyone's got a part to play whether you like it or not. Yes, even people you've never met or spoken to in your life get to throw stones or spit at you as you walk to the courthouse. Neighbors come out of the woodwork to testify. Some have old grudges. Maybe you borrowed a cup and didn't return it. Maybe you outbid someone at the market. Or maybe you just beat someone in an argument 5 years ago. It was a lot less like modern courtroom where you hoped for impartial witnesses, and more like bring your worst enemy to work day. Next comes the infamous search for the devil's mark. That birthmark, mole, or scar you never thought twice about is suddenly being inspected by a stranger with a very sharp stick. Misinterpretation was the rule, not the exception. Anything odd on your skin was surely connected to your soul, and what else could it be if not a sign of evil? Then come the forced confessions. It doesn't matter if you're guilty or not. Fear and pain make everyone say things they wouldn't otherwise. Torture was the shortcut to truth, if you can call it that. You confess just to make it stop, and if you confess, you're pressured to name others. This is survival. Maybe you blurt out the names of neighbors who never liked you. Maybe you just make something up. Either way, the accusations spread like the bubonic plague on steroids. The priest arrives to question your piety. Maybe he's already made up his mind, or maybe he's holding a grudge about that time you skipped a donation. Priests could be as biased as anyone else, and sometimes more so. Even animals, children, and your favorite recipes aren't safe from suspicion. If your dog acts weird or your cat won't come when called, that's evidence. If a child says you made funny bread or strange soup, panic takes over. The more ordinary the detail, the more suspicious it becomes. Prayer tests and the notorious swimming trial are next. You're told to recite the Lord's Prayer perfectly or you're tied up and tossed into a pond. If you float, you're guilty. If you sink, you're innocent but also probably dead. Medieval justice, lose-lose with bonus hypothermia. People believe in spectral evidence. If someone has a nightmare about you or claims they saw your ghostly image, that's considered proof. Dreams, rumors, and wild stories become legal currency. By now, guilt is assumed. The system isn't built for fairness. After all, only 18.3% of the accused were ever found not guilty. That part was a joke, but you get the idea. The goal is to prove the village was right to be afraid. Then, the real consequences: property taken by neighbors, officials, or anyone looking for a windfall. Greed hides behind the mask of justice. Your family's reputation is ruined. Even if you survive, your children and siblings carry the stain. Sometimes, whole families are brought down by one accusation. The public trial is entertainment. People gather to watch, gossip, and guess your fate. It's the original reality show, but with higher stakes. Superstitions multiply as the crowd works itself up. Every sneeze, every flickering candle, every barking dog is a sign. Mass hysteria takes over and logic goes out the window. In the end, innocence or guilt rarely matters. Once the trial starts, the outcome is usually decided by fear, jealousy, and bad luck. It's not justice, it's theater, and you're the main character. The only difference is that there's no plot shield to protect you from ending up dead. It's strange to think how many of the things we take for granted, like our quirks, our habits, or even our little streaks of bad luck, could have landed us in real trouble in the Middle Ages. Back then, just being a little different was enough to put you on the wrong side of destiny. So the next time you admire your odd collection, burn a scented candle, or simply talk to your dog, remember how good you have it in the modern world. In medieval Europe, you might have been next in line for a witch trial. Night still holds the village in its gentle grip as the samurai wakes. Thin light slips through rice paper doors, illuminating the edges of a quiet world shaped by centuries of order. The sword rests within arm's reach. Sandals wait near the threshold, ready for another day that begins and ends with ritual. In the distance, a temple bell rings, its sound fading into the hush of morning mists and the faint calls of vendors preparing for the day ahead. In these moments before dawn, the house feels timeless. Tatami mats are cool beneath bare feet. A single lantern burns low, casting shadows on family heirlooms arranged carefully in the alcove. The scent of last night's incense lingers, mingling with the earthy smell of the garden. Here, the samurai's life is rooted in the habits of his ancestors. He bows in silent respect to portraits of those who came before, then recites a poem beneath his breath, steadying his heart for whatever the day may bring. Beyond these walls, Japan is changing. Whispers of foreign ships drift up from distant harbors. Rumors of new weapons and strange customs pass from mouth to mouth. Yet within this house, the old ways endure for now. The samurai's world is shaped by loyalty and obedience, by discipline and restraint, by honor passed from father to son. Each day is lived as if the world might always remain the same. But in the hush before sunrise, there is a sense that these moments cannot last. The seasons turn and change approaches quietly, as certain as the slow, patient unfolding of dawn. This is the story of a man whose life is built on tradition, and who must face the slow unraveling of everything he has known. The sword is still sharp, the armor polished and ready, but the world beyond the door waits with new questions, and not every answer can be found in the old ways. In the quiet years of his childhood, the samurai's days begin with discipline. Before the sun has risen above the garden wall, his father calls him from sleep. The floorboards are cold under his feet as he kneels beside his older brother, bowing in silent greeting. Each morning, the household dojo fills with the soft sound of bare feet on polished wood. The boy's hands grip a wooden sword, heavy and awkward at first, but soon familiar. Practice begins not with fighting, but with repetition, stance, breath, respect. His father's voice is patient but firm, correcting posture, teaching the importance of control. Lessons are not confined to the sword. His mother shows him how to arrange flowers, how to kneel with dignity, how to fold paper with quiet attention. After breakfast, he learns to recite poems, copying lines with careful brushstrokes while the scent of ink and rice paper drifts through the air. On some mornings, the family gathers around the ancestral altar. Incense smoke curls upward as he listens to tales of great warriors from the past. Ancestors are remembered with solemn words, their deeds recited so their spirits will guide the living. Yet childhood is not all restraint. There are moments of play beneath the cherry trees when petals fall like rain and laughter echoes across the courtyard. With other children of the clan, he chases shadows and pretends to be the heroes of old stories. Festivals bring bright banners and sweet rice cakes, and for a few precious hours, rules soften. Even then, he watches his elders and copies their gestures, learning that joy and decorum must always share the same space. As the seasons pass, the boy becomes more aware of duty. He watches his father prepare for journeys to the castle, hears the quiet talk of politics and alliances, and senses the weight of expectation that rests on every member of the household. A first glimpse of violence, a cut finger, a harsh lesson meted out to a servant, teaches him that the sword is not just for show. At night, he listens to ghost stories whispered by his grandmother, tales where honor is everything and shame can follow a family for generations. By the end of childhood, the boy's world is bounded by ritual and memory, by the certainty that every act, no matter how small, is seen by ancestors and neighbors alike. In this careful world, he begins to forge an identity built on respect, loyalty, and the silent pride that comes from meeting each new day with discipline. The foundation is set for the life that lies ahead, shaped as much by lessons in restraint as by dreams of glory. The day of his coming-of-age ceremony arrives with soft rain falling on the garden stones. The boy, no longer a child, kneels before his family's altar, dressed in new robes. His father stands at his side, solemn and proud, presenting him with his first real sword. The steel is cold and beautiful, the weight of it settling not only in his hands, but in his heart. With a deep bow, he promises to honor his ancestors and protect his clan. The ceremony is quiet and brief, but for him, it is a threshold. The world beyond the family's gate feels larger and more demanding now. New responsibilities gather quickly. The young samurai joins other boys in rigorous training, learning to ride, to shoot arrows, and to handle the sword with precision. Elder warriors supervise their efforts, correcting mistakes with patient words or, when needed, sharp reminders. Each drill is a test of focus and endurance. In the evenings, his muscles ache, but there is satisfaction in the slow, steady improvement. Friendships form in these hours, sometimes gentle, sometimes marked by rivalry and playful competition. Every bond is shaped by the shared understanding that each of them will one day be called upon to defend all they know. Away from the dojo, lessons continue. He studies calligraphy, reads old texts about strategy and duty, and listens to the stories of older retainers. Some speak with gentle wisdom, recalling past battles and the consequences of pride. Others offer strict warnings about the danger of careless words or impulsive acts. The young samurai learns that honor can be won and lost in a moment, and that mistakes may follow a man for life. His first real duties seem small at first, guarding the household gate, delivering messages for his father, helping oversee the workers in the fields. Yet with each task comes a quiet sense of responsibility. He stands a little straighter, speaks with more care, and feels the eyes of elders upon him. Sometimes he longs for the freedom of childhood, but he understands that each small act is part of a larger story. The world outside is growing less certain. Rumors drift into the household of distant conflicts and uneasy alliances. He catches whispers of foreign ships along the coast, of new weapons and strange customs arriving in distant towns. Though much of this seems far away, he feels a quiet tension beneath the surface of daily life. As the season of youth fades, the young samurai finds pride in his new role. There are moments of anxiety and doubt, but also the steady reassurance of tradition. The path ahead is not yet clear, but he faces it with discipline, loyalty, and the determination to prove himself worthy of the blade he now carries by his side. With the coming of adulthood, daily life settles into a pattern of service and vigilance. The young samurai takes his place among the retainers, following the Lord's commands with careful attention. Some mornings are filled with simple routines: checking the storerooms, tending to the horses, or helping oversee the repairs of a wall battered by wind and rain. Other days bring more demanding duties. He joins patrols along the borders of the clan's land, eyes sharp for signs of trouble or unrest. Peace is a fragile thing. Though the province seems quiet, stories circulate of bandits lurking in the forest and old rivals testing boundaries. Each journey through the countryside is a lesson in patience and caution. The young samurai learns to read the land, to listen for the change in a bird's song, and to sense when something is amiss. Sometimes, his presence alone is enough to keep order. Other times, words are not enough, and a hand must rest on the sword's hilt. Within the castle, the demands of rank and etiquette are always present. He attends formal dinners, bows in the presence of senior retainers, and learns to navigate the silent politics that shape every decision. There is pride in performing well, in earning a word of praise from an elder, or in being trusted with a delicate message. Yet there are moments of tension too: jealousies between retainers, quiet rivalries that flare up over a spilled cup or a perceived slight. Each day he must weigh loyalty against ambition, choosing when to speak and when to remain silent. Even in times of peace, discipline never wavers. The samurai rises before dawn to practice archery and sword forms in the morning mist. He sharpens his weapons, tends to his armor, and repeats old poems until their lessons become second nature. These rituals anchor him, providing comfort and a sense of purpose as the days slip by. There are moments of gentle rebellion hidden between the lines of duty. Sometimes he writes poetry in secret, letting his feelings spill onto thin paper. On rare occasions, he meets friends in the garden or by the riverbank, trading stories and laughter far from the eyes of elders. These small freedoms remind him of the boy he once was, but also reveal the man he is becoming. The outside world never disappears completely. Traders bring news of strange inventions and foreign goods. Occasionally, a visitor arrives from another province, bringing warnings or requests for help. Each piece of news is weighed carefully. Even in peace, the young samurai senses that the old certainties are beginning to shift. Through it all, he serves with diligence and restraint. Whether standing guard beneath the moon or overseeing a humble harvest, he understands that a samurai's life is built as much on patience and quiet effort as on valor in battle. Every day, in peace and in shadow, he practices the art of readiness, waiting for the moment when his skills and loyalty will be truly tested. The first true test of a samurai's courage arrives with little warning. Rumors of rebellion ripple through the province, carried on anxious voices and hurried letters. The young warrior senses the change in his lord's manner, in the way retainers move quickly through the castle halls and the nervous edge that settles over the evening meals. Orders are given to prepare weapons, reinforce the gates, and stand ready for whatever may come. On the eve of battle, the household is transformed. Black lacquered armor is brought from storage, swords polished until they gleam in the lantern light. Old prayers are whispered at the ancestral shrine. The samurai's mother tucks a small charm into the lining of his sleeve, and his father offers a silent nod of approval. There is fear in every heart, but it is hidden beneath the discipline of routine. Marching out beneath a sky heavy with clouds, the samurai joins his comrades along muddy roads and narrow forest paths. The land he once patrolled in peace is now tense with threat. Each sound carries meaning: the distant call of a crow, the crack of a branch beneath a careless foot. He remembers his lessons, his father's voice in his mind, urging calm and vigilance. The first clash is sudden and chaotic. Arrows whistle through the air, and the cry of warriors drowns out all thought. The young samurai moves as he was trained, sword drawn, body steady. Every sense is sharpened by fear. The world shrinks to the space between him and his opponent. In the blur of combat, the lines between bravery and terror grow thin. There is victory, but it is costly. Some friends do not return. Wounds are counted in the silence that follows the fight. The samurai sits with his comrades by a smoky fire, staring into the embers, feeling the weight of what has changed. The taste of triumph is bitter, marked by the knowledge that violence leaves scars that are not easily healed. Returning home, he finds that nothing feels quite the same. The family celebrates his safe return, but he senses the distance in their eyes. He carries both pride and sorrow within him, remembering those lost and wondering what the future will bring. The world he once found secure now feels fragile. In the months that follow, he dreams of the battle, replaying moments in his mind. Honor has been tested, and he has proven himself, but the cost lingers. Each day, he works to restore order to the land, to heal what can be mended, and to honor the memory of those who are gone. He begins to understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but the quiet endurance that remains long after the storm has passed. After the fires of battle fade, daily life returns with new weight. The young samurai is called to serve within the daimyo's residence, where every movement is shaped by ancient custom. Here, discipline is not shown on the field but in quiet obedience to countless rituals. He bows low at the threshold, listens for the slightest change in his lord's tone, and responds with care to every request. Mornings are spent in formal audiences where he stands among retainers in carefully ordered ranks. News of the province is delivered in measured voices, and his role is to observe, advise when asked, and never reveal doubt. The castle's rooms are filled with painted screens and the scent of incense. The clink of armor is replaced by the gentle rustle of silk robes. He learns the subtle art of reading expressions and moods, knowing that a single misstep in etiquette can bring disgrace. Service is demanding, but not without reward. The samurai shares camaraderie with other retainers during long nights on watch or in moments of rare leisure. Sometimes, they gather in a quiet corner to write poems or exchange stories of their families and distant villages. Bonds deepen through shared hardship, and the lessons of loyalty are reinforced by daily practice. There are moments of humiliation as well. A poorly chosen word, a delayed answer, or a mistake in protocol can bring public correction or quiet rebuke. Ambitions simmer beneath the surface, and small rivalries sometimes lead to gossip or silent resentment. Yet the samurai strives to maintain dignity, to show respect to all, and to support the harmony of the household. Within the daimyo's house, he witnesses the constant balancing of power, alliances sealed by marriage, negotiations with merchants and envoys, celebrations of small victories or rituals to honor the ancestors. The young samurai learns to adapt, observing the shifting tides of favor and fortune. Sometimes he is called to carry messages, deliver delicate news, or resolve disputes among those who serve under him. Each act, whether public or private, tests his judgment. In rare moments, he finds comfort in beauty. The tranquil curve of a garden bridge, the soft glow of lanterns at dusk, the sound of distant music on festival nights all remind him of what endures beyond duty. Pride grows from quiet service and sacrifice, and a sense of belonging comes from knowing he is trusted to uphold his lord's house. The years pass with seasons of ceremony and responsibility. Through diligence and restraint, the samurai becomes not just a warrior, but a guardian of order. The lessons learned in the daimyo's service will shape him long after he leaves its walls. Time passes, and small signals of a shifting world begin to appear. The samurai notices unfamiliar ships anchored in distant harbors, their sails white against the sky. Merchants return from port cities with stories of Westerners who speak strange tongues and wear clothing of stiff wool and gleaming metal. In the castle, whispers grow louder about new weapons and new ideas, and the elders gather more often behind closed doors to debate the future. Curiosity and unease settle over the household. Some retainers are eager to see the world change, hoping for new opportunities or greater power. Others, especially the older warriors, cling to the ways they have always known, wary of what may be lost. The samurai himself feels both fear and fascination. He sees a railway being laid on the outskirts of the province, hears the distant whistle of a steam engine, and wonders what kind of world his children will inherit. Letters arrive from the capital describing reforms and decrees. There is talk of land surveys, new taxes, and even rumors that swords may soon be forbidden. The younger generation debates the future with energy, questioning the value of old customs, while elders urge patience and respect. At meals and gatherings, conversation often turns to the tension between tradition and progress. The samurai faces the challenge of adapting while remaining true to his code. He tries to learn new skills, studies Western maps and books, and practices foreign words in private. Yet every attempt brings a sense of loss, as if each step forward requires letting go of something precious. Sometimes he visits the temple gardens, seeking comfort among ancient stones and quiet pools, remembering the lessons of his ancestors. Friendships are tested by these changes. Old companions find themselves on different sides of new arguments. Some are drawn into secret societies or political movements, while others retreat into silence. The samurai feels these rifts most keenly in the company of those he once trusted without question. Through it all, daily life continues. The duties of the household remain and the seasons follow their familiar cycle. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet anxiety grows. The world outside the gates is moving faster than anyone expected, and the samurai senses that the time for old certainties is slipping away. At dusk, he sits beneath the lanterns and writes poetry, searching for words to hold together the past and the future. The page fills with images of falling leaves, distant thunder, and the hope that honor can survive, even when everything else begins to change. At last, the quiet unease of change erupts into open conflict. The shogunate's grip weakens, and across Japan, old allegiances fracture. The samurai's clan receives word. The emperor's forces are marching, and the country is choosing sides. The household that once hummed with ritual now pulses with urgent preparations. Swords are sharpened, armor mended, and banners unfurled for what may be the last time. Farewells are brief and heavy with feeling. Before departing, the samurai bows deeply to his elders, lingers for a moment with his family, and offers prayers at the ancestral shrine. On the road, he joins his comrades beneath unfamiliar flags, all of them aware that the battles ahead will determine not just their own fates, but the future of the warrior class itself. The first clash comes at Tobafushimi, where the thunder of gunfire drowns out the clang of swords. The samurai fights with skill and discipline, but the old tactics seem fragile against the power of modern weapons. He sees friends fall not in hand-to-hand duels but at the edge of smoky fields. The realization settles in that courage and tradition may not be enough. The war is swift and brutal. From the siege of Aizu to the final stand at Hakodate, the samurai endures hardship and loss. He watches castles burn, listens to the cries of wounded comrades, and grieves for the old world slipping away. Some victories bring hope, but each is followed by greater sorrow. The emperor's banners rise over the land, and the old lords surrender one by one. When the fighting ends, defeat is final and unmistakable. The clan's castle is surrendered and soon dismantled. The samurai stands before its empty walls, remembering festivals, lessons, and the promises of his youth. The sword he once carried with pride is now a mark of a lost era. There are no words to ease the ache of loss, only the steady effort of survival. Returning home, the samurai helps bury the dead and comfort the broken-hearted. He honors the memory of those who fell and keeps silence for the friends who will not return. The discipline learned in earlier years helps him face each day with dignity, but grief walks beside him. The world is changed, and the old order has passed. In the quiet aftermath, the samurai sits with family and neighbors, listening to the distant sounds of a new Japan. He tries to imagine what comes next, uncertain if the spirit of the warrior can find a place in this unfamiliar age. Still, he bows at sunset, keeping faith with the traditions that shaped him, even as their meaning fades into memory. In the aftermath of war, the samurai's world contracts. The clan's lands are confiscated, titles stripped away, and the old bonds of loyalty dissolve. No longer bound to a lord, he becomes Ronin, a masterless warrior adrift in a country eager to forget its past. The sword that once gave him purpose now marks him as an outsider in streets filled with new faces and unfamiliar customs. Days pass in quiet uncertainty. The Ronin searches for work in bustling towns, offering lessons in swordsmanship or seeking any task that will keep hunger at bay. Sometimes he tends gardens for city merchants. Sometimes he copies texts in the dim light of a rented room. Most people glance at him with pity or suspicion, wary of his manner and the old scars visible beneath his sleeves. The city is crowded, but the life of a Ronin is a lonely one. Encounters with other former samurai are bittersweet. Some have adapted, finding work as teachers, clerks, or guards for wealthy families. Others struggle, holding tightly to the rituals of Bushido even as the world moves past them. Together, they gather in small tea houses, sharing stories of lost battles and vanished fortunes. Laughter sometimes returns, but it carries the weight of memory. New rules bring new indignities. The carrying of swords is restricted, and the ancient privileges of the warrior class are quietly erased. At times, the Ronin feels anger and shame. He remembers the pride of his father's house, the careful lessons of his youth, and wonders if any of it still matters. Yet, each morning he performs his old routines, polishing his blade, bowing to the rising sun, reciting lines of poetry. These small acts help him keep dignity and purpose, even when few others see them. To survive, the Ronin learns flexibility. He studies unfamiliar trades, visits the temple for guidance, and helps neighbors with tasks once beneath his status. Children in the neighborhood are drawn to his quiet strength. Sometimes he teaches them games or shows them how to plant seeds. In these moments, the old spirit of service is renewed in simple acts of kindness. As the years move on, the memory of war becomes less vivid. The Ronin's hands grow steadier with age, and he accepts his place among the city's ordinary people. In the evening, he sits quietly outside his small room, watching the lanterns flicker and the world change around him. He knows the age of the samurai has passed, but finds comfort in the knowledge that honor can survive, even without a master to serve. With time, the former samurai builds a new life, one shaped by quiet adaptation rather than command. He marries, and his home is modest, a rented house on the edge of the city, where a small garden grows between stones. Children fill the rooms with laughter, curious about their father's past and the strange sword resting above the door. He teaches them respect, patience, and the old rituals, blending them gently with the ways of a modern world. There is pride in passing on what he knows. Each morning, he recites poems with his eldest son, and in the evenings, he tells stories of loyalty, loss, and courage. The children listen, caught between wonder and disbelief. At times, they challenge the old lessons, eager to explore new ideas and the bustling city beyond their gate. He lets them question, guiding with patience, knowing their world will not be the same as his. Work changes, too. The samurai learns the business of trading rice, keeps accounts for a local merchant, or sometimes helps manage a new school. Though he once carried a banner into battle, he now finds meaning in order and care, arranging schedules, writing careful letters, or keeping peace among neighbors. Former skills remain useful even if no one calls him to defend a castle. Family is both comfort and challenge. His children grow quickly, drawn to Western clothing and unfamiliar customs. They dream of railways, steamships, and possibilities beyond the old boundaries. Sometimes he feels left behind, a relic in their eyes, but he also senses their respect. They return for advice or help, or to listen as he chants prayers for ancestors during festival days. Despite all changes, he clings to small gardens and temple visits, keeping alive what matters most. He tends the family shrine with his wife, lights incense, and remembers those who came before. The world outside is faster, louder, and often confusing, but inside the home, rituals offer peace. At night, he feels quiet pride. Adapting has not been easy, but in watching his family thrive, he recognizes a new kind of honor. The lessons of Bushido are not lost, they are transformed. They survive in every act of care, each thoughtful word, and in the hope that the best of the old world will live on through those who carry it forward. Years gather quietly in the former samurai's life. His hair turns silver and his hands slow, but the old patterns remain. Each morning, he wakes before the sun, sweeps the garden path, and bows to the family shrine. The house, once full of noise, is often peaceful now. Children have grown and moved away, yet they return with gifts and laughter, eager to share news and listen to their father's quiet wisdom. The world outside his window is unrecognizable from the one he knew as a boy. Railways hum in the distance, Western fashions brighten the streets, and new ways of thinking shape the city's rhythm. Sometimes, memories drift in the sound of armor clinking, the pride of youthful service, the loss of friends on the battlefield. He recalls the first sword given by his father and the promise made in the flicker of shrine lanterns. With age comes reflection and sometimes regret. There are moments he wishes he had spoken more gently or seen change coming with a kinder heart. Yet he finds peace in what he has kept. The poems he still recites, the careful rituals, the stories that survive in his grandchildren's laughter. He writes letters to distant relatives, tends the graves of family and comrades, and watches the seasons turn. On quiet afternoons, the former samurai sits in the garden, the scent of pine and plum blossoms filling the air. He feels the warmth of the sun, the cool touch of the breeze, and senses the presence of those who came before. In the faces of his grandchildren, he glimpses both past and future. Their curiosity brings him hope, and their resilience assures him that something of the samurai spirit will endure. As evening falls, he prepares one last cup of tea, savoring the stillness of twilight. He is no longer needed on the battlefield, but his life remains woven into the story of a changing nation. Honor has taken on new forms. Though much is lost, much also endures. The last samurai's journey draws to a close not in sorrow, but in gentle acceptance, as the echoes of his life linger quietly beneath the ever-turning sky. Before dawn in Rome, the city already murmurs with hidden life. Marble arches cast long shadows over tangled alleys, and behind the crowded walls of a modest apartment, a family of women and girls lies close together in the lingering cool. The linen beneath their cheeks is rough and worn. Each breath, each quiet shift on the shared pallet is part of a morning routine that repeats itself through the seasons and across generations. Beyond these walls, Rome belongs to the powerful and the restless, to merchants shouting in the distance, to the clatter of carts and the promises of a waking empire. Inside, the world is smaller and gentler, shaped by the rhythm of women's voices, the press of bodies in the dark, and the first soft laughter of the day. Here, daily life begins in whispers and in silence, with chores and customs quietly passed from mother to daughter. In this room, a young girl of Rome learns to listen before speaking, to watch before acting, and to find comfort in closeness rather than privacy. No poets will write her name, no statue will bear her likeness. Yet with each sunrise, her story begins again, unseen by the city outside, yet essential to the world within these walls. The seasons will turn, and her life will be shaped by small choices, quiet strength, and the enduring bonds of a family of Roman women. In a narrow apartment above the Roman street, morning begins before sunlight touches the rooftops. The youngest daughter wakes in a tangle of limbs pressed between her mother and sisters. There is no privacy, but she finds comfort in the closeness, in the shared warmth that lingers from night until day. The city stirs beyond the walls, but her world starts quietly with whispered instructions and the soft clatter of bowls in the kitchen. Each day brings small but certain expectations. She helps grind grain with her mother, her arms aching as the stones turn, and listens to the careful rhythm of adult voices. Older sisters teach her to weave, fingers fumbling at first, then learning to move with the wool's resistance. The loom is both a lesson and a test, a space where approval comes in nods and gentle corrections. There is pride in getting it right, in making something useful, even as her place in the family is still uncertain. Outside, she plays in the shadowed alley while chores allow. Children invent games with pebbles and string, laughter echoing off stone. She knows the limits, never stray far, never speak to strangers, always come home when called. Rome is vast, but a girl's life is carefully contained, watched over by mothers and neighbors alike. She learns more from listening than speaking. At mealtimes, women lower their eyes and let the men talk, sharing glances that say what cannot be voiced. News from the market, rumors about the emperor, warnings about illness or bad fortune, all are filtered through these daily exchanges. Sometimes, when only women remain, voices rise in low laughter or song. These moments are precious, a brief release before another round of duties. festivals are the brightest threads in her year. On special days, she follows her mother through the crowded streets, eyes wide as flower petals drift and music plays. She wears a wreath of leaves, a simple crown, and joins in the games with other children. These joys are fleeting, soon replaced by routine, but they linger in memory, returning on long afternoons when the sun is hot and work is endless. Evenings arrive with another round of small tasks. She helps sweep the floor and fill the oil lamps, her movements slower as the day ends. The household grows quieter as night falls. In the flicker of lamplight, her mother sometimes shares an old story or a gentle warning from her own childhood. She listens, sleepy but attentive, to tales of clever girls and watchful gods. At night, the youngest daughter settles once more among her family. The city hums outside, but in this room she finds safety in routine. Every day is much the same, yet each is shaped by small victories, a finished chore, a shared secret, the warmth of a familiar hand. She does not yet understand the strength that comes from patience and from moving quietly in a world that rarely hears her. But already she is learning to endure, to notice, and to grow, one gentle morning at a time. As seasons turn, the youngest daughter enters a new stage of life. Her body changes quietly and the rules of her world begin to shift. She is watched more closely now. Modesty is expected in every gesture, and careless laughter is gently hushed by her mother's glance. Each morning, she joins the older girls at the loom or the fire, her chores growing more demanding as she learns the art of managing a household. No longer shielded by the innocence of childhood, she becomes more aware of the silent judgments in every corner of her small world. The neighborhood feels less like a playground and more like a stage. When she fetches water, older women greet her with measured smiles, and neighbor boys offer teasing remarks she is no longer allowed to return. Her mother gives quiet advice, speaking of reputation and the power of whispered words. A stain on a tunic, a careless word in the market, a moment alone with the wrong person, all can linger in the minds of others. Her sisters warn her to stay close, to move quickly through the streets, and to be mindful of who is watching. Visits to the public baths, once a place of play, now stir embarrassment and curiosity. She notices the way women glance at one another, appraising and comparing. In these steamy rooms, news travels fast. Sometimes she hears stories of other girls, of marriages arranged, of trouble avoided or found, of dreams given up quietly. The world of women is both shelter and pressure, full of secrets that shape every day. At home, the subject of marriage creeps quietly into conversations. Her mother and aunts speak in hushed tones about dowries and family alliances. She understands that her own wishes will matter little and listens for clues about her future. Sometimes her father's friends visit, and she is called to offer wine or bread, her face carefully blank, her movements precise. Every meeting feels like a test, though no one says so aloud. In rare, quiet moments, she finds small ways to rebel. With trusted friends, she shares bits of gossip or dreams of another life. Sometimes they laugh together behind the garden wall, exchanging stories or secret notes written on scraps of pottery. These small acts of resistance feel daring, even as they change nothing. They are reminders that she is still herself beneath the rules. The coming-of-age festival arrives, marking her shift from childhood to womanhood. She is given new clothing, her hair is dressed with care, and the family celebrates with simple gifts and prayers for her future. There is pride in the ritual, but also uncertainty. She is caught between old games and new expectations, still longing for the freedom of childhood even as she tries to move gracefully into her new role. As evening falls, she sits beside her mother, listening to the gentle rhythm of advice. The lessons are practical and often unspoken. How to mend a torn tunic, how to hold back tears when scolded, how to choose words carefully in the company of strangers. Every day brings new tests, but also quiet hope. She wonders what her life will become, and whether she will find space for her own voice among the many that shape her world. In the fading light, The girl studies the faces of the women around her, seeing in each a story that was never truly her own. She senses the burden of expectations and the quiet strength that survival demands. Each day, she moves further from the freedom of childhood, preparing for a future that is both familiar and unknown. The household grows quieter as preparations for the betrothal begin. In hidden corners, women whisper about dowries, contracts, and the choices that are not truly choices at all. The youngest daughter becomes the focus of careful attention. Her mother inspects every garment and braids her hair with deliberate hands. Each gesture feels heavy with meaning, as if it could change the course of the agreement soon to come. The betrothal itself is not romantic. It is a matter of negotiation between families. Fathers and uncles discuss terms over bread and watered wine, voices low and serious. The girl listens from another room, piecing together her future from snatches of conversation. She learns that her worth is counted in linens, silver, and the promise of future children. The day she is presented to her intended's family, she wears her cleanest tunic and moves with practiced restraint. Her eyes do not linger long on her future husband, a man she barely knows and is not expected to love. Instead, she watches the women around him, searching for signs of kindness or warning in their expressions. After the formal agreement, there is a small ceremony. Gifts are exchanged and relatives offer soft congratulations. The girl receives simple jewelry, a ribbon for her hair, perhaps a carved figurine. She holds these tokens tightly, unsure if they belong to her or if they are only temporary, soon to be passed on to another. The atmosphere is part celebration, part farewell. Her sisters offer quiet jokes, trying to lift the weight of the moment, but their laughter does not last. As the family prepares for the transition, the girl gathers keepsakes from her childhood. A worn cloth doll, a stone from the garden, a scrap of faded embroidery, each a piece of the life she will soon leave behind. She packs them carefully, knowing there is little space for sentiment in her new home. Older women offer advice in hushed tones. They share small warnings, gentle tricks for winning favor, and secrets for finding comfort in unfamiliar places. Some of their words are practical, some are wistful memories of their own lost homes and friends. The girl listens, memorizing each piece of wisdom, unsure which will prove most useful in the days ahead. The last days before her departure are filled with tasks. She helps her mother mend linens, polishes household shrines, and visits the market for special food. The work feels heavier now, each task a reminder of what will soon be lost. In the evenings, her family gathers close, lingering over simple meals and lingering words. These nights are quiet and bittersweet, marked by the unspoken knowledge that nothing will ever be quite the same again. On the morning she leaves, her mother wraps her in a shawl and presses a blessing to her brow. The city beyond the door is unchanged, but her world has shifted. She steps into the street surrounded by family, carrying only a few possessions and the memory of everything she once called home. With each step, she moves toward an uncertain future, shaped more by duty than desire and strengthened by the quiet resilience learned in the shadows of her first home. The first days in her new household are filled with uncertainty. The young bride enters her husband's home carrying only a small bundle and the lessons from her mother. She is greeted with formal words by her husband's relatives. Every face seems to measure her, judging her dress, her posture, her silence. Her own family fades quickly into memory as the door closes behind her. She learns the order of the household by watching carefully. Each woman, from her husband's mother to the youngest servant, has a place and a duty. The older women teach her which linens to use for guests, how to portion oil for the lamps, and where to keep the sacred offerings for the family gods. Each task is an opportunity to prove her worth, but also a chance to make mistakes. She moves quietly, careful not to overstep, apologizing softly for errors that are swiftly corrected by an experienced hand. Her husband's mother is the true authority. The young wife follows her example, rising before dawn to light the fire and oversee the day's work. Instructions come in short, gentle phrases, sometimes with a hint of warning. At meals, she serves in silence, listening to the conversation but rarely joining in. She soon discovers that loyalty within the household is complex. Alliances are formed in the kitchen or garden, strengthened by a shared laugh or a whispered secret. She learns who can be trusted and when it is safer to keep her thoughts to herself. Supervising servants is a new challenge. Some are older than she is, and not all are willing to accept her authority. She finds herself balancing firmness and kindness, learning that respect is earned slowly and can vanish quickly with a careless word. Mistakes are remembered, but so are small successes. When a meal is prepared well or a room cleaned to her mother-in-law's standard, she receives a rare word of praise. At times, the young wife feels lonely. Letters from her family are treasured, read and reread on quiet evenings. There is comfort in small routines, spinning wool by lamplight, tending a pot of herbs on the windowsill, or lingering in the garden where flowers grow in the sun. Over time, she discovers friendship with other wives in neighboring homes. A chance meeting at the well or in the market can become a quiet exchange of advice, sympathy, or news. These secret networks offer support and laughter, even if they must be maintained with discretion. Some days bring small victories. She hosts a successful meal, negotiates with a stubborn servant, or soothes a child's tears. She learns to manage accounts, keeping careful track of grain, oil, and wine, so that the household runs smoothly even when her husband is away. Her world expands and contracts with each season, shaped by routine but never quite predictable. In her new home, the young wife adapts. She finds strength in patience and in the slow gathering of trust. The days may be long and the work unending, but she discovers pride in the order she brings and the calm she maintains. Quietly, she begins to shape the household in small ways, building a life that is her own, even within the boundaries others have set. With the coming of marriage, the rhythms of her days change once more. Soon, the young wife feels the first uncertain signs of pregnancy. Her mother-in-law notices before she speaks of it, offering herbal teas and soft prayers to Juno and Diana, the protectors of women and children. The household's hopes quietly gather around her, and every meal, every night of rest, becomes a private ritual of anticipation and worry. Pregnancy is both blessing and risk. Each month brings discomfort, but also a growing sense of purpose. She learns from older women how to ease swollen feet and calm anxious thoughts. Friends visit with advice, sharing old remedies and quiet reassurances. She feels the weight of expectation, hoping for a son but fearing for her health. Her husband's pride is quiet but clear, and her own fears are kept mostly to herself. When the time comes, birth is managed at home, behind closed doors. Experienced hands guide her through pain and uncertainty, while others gather in adjoining rooms, waiting for news. The hours are long and blurred with exhaustion. Sometimes there are tears, sometimes prayers spoken aloud in desperate voices. When the child is finally born, a cry signals the end of suspense, and relief spreads through the house. If the infant is strong, there are celebrations, small gifts, and a feast shared with neighbors. The new mother cradles her child, exhausted but full of wonder. But not all births bring joy. Some nights end in silence or sorrow. When an infant is lost, grief is often private, shared quietly among women who have known the same pain. There are few words for comfort, only gentle hands and shared tears in the dark. Still, the mother must return to her work, caring for those who remain and hiding her sorrow behind a calm face. As her children grow, her responsibilities multiply. She nurses the infant, soothes fevers, and teaches the little ones to speak and walk. Each child brings pride, laughter, and the endless work of keeping a household safe and fed. Boys are prepared for the world outside, learning family trades or letters if fortune allows. Daughters learn beside their mother, repeating the tasks that fill each day. The mother's world revolves around their needs, her days shaped by their hunger, illness, and play. Illness is a constant worry. A cough in the night or a rash on a child's skin is met with swift remedies, prayers, and sleepless hours. Sometimes the gods answer and the child recovers. Sometimes, despite every effort, loss returns. The mother bears each sorrow quietly, strengthened by the solidarity of women who understand. In time, the mother's place in the household becomes more secure. She earns respect for her skill in managing chores, calming disputes, and keeping children well. Her husband relies on her judgment, and younger women come to her for guidance. Still, she measures her days in small victories and losses, the hope and heartbreak of motherhood woven through every season. The journey of raising children in ancient Rome is both burden and blessing. Through patience and care, the mother endures, finding meaning in moments of laughter, in quiet songs sung to restless babies, and in the faces of those she has kept safe for another day. As years pass, the mother's place within the household becomes more defined. Each morning begins before sunrise as she oversees the lighting of the kitchen fire and checks the day's supplies. She inventories the pantry, plans the meals, and delegates tasks to both daughters and servants. Even the smallest details, from the arrangement of the table to the washing of linens, reflect her invisible labor and careful attention. Managing a Roman household is complex and demanding. She settles disputes among the servants, addresses the complaints of children, and finds solutions for sudden shortages or unexpected guests. When her husband is away on business, she manages household accounts, keeps records of purchases, and makes decisions about repairs or new acquisitions. Though she rarely leaves the home except for the market or the baths, her influence quietly extends to every corner. Spiritual life is woven into her daily routines. She tends the family shrines, lights lamps for the household gods, and ensures that the proper offerings are made during festivals. Neighbors come to her for advice about rituals or to borrow ingredients for special meals. She finds pride in upholding traditions, believing that the household's good fortune is tied to her vigilance. Relationships with other women become a source of strength and comfort. She exchanges recipes and stories with neighbors, helps with their burdens when she can, and relies on their wisdom when troubles arise in her own home. These informal networks allow her to share laughter, offer small gifts, or simply find a listening ear. The solidarity of women softens the daily hardships and creates quiet bonds that last for years. Difficulties are inevitable. Sometimes a servant falls ill or a store of grain is ruined by dampness. She adapts quickly, finding creative ways to stretch supplies or barter with vendors. If conflict arises between relatives living under the same roof, she mediates, smoothing tempers and restoring order with patience and gentle words. There are rare moments of rest when the day's work is done. She enjoys these small comforts, whether it is singing softly to herself while weaving or watching children play in the fading sunlight. The quiet satisfaction of a well-run home is her reward, even if few outsiders notice her steady hand. Though her world is bounded by walls and routine, the woman who manages a Roman household shapes the lives of everyone within it. Her power lies in decision and foresight, in the trust she earns, and in the calm she brings to daily life. Behind closed doors, she becomes the quiet center around which the home revolves. No matter how carefully a household is managed, danger can arrive without warning. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, through a careless word or a lingering glance, and sometimes it bursts forth in the form of public scandal. The woman who keeps a Roman home must always be alert to the shifting moods of those around her, and to the sharp tongues of neighbors and servants alike. Gossip travels quickly in the narrow streets and crowded courtyards of Rome. A rumor, once started, can take on a life of its own. The smallest misstep, a visit from a stranger, a missed festival, or a servant's complaint can become fuel for speculation. The mother teaches her daughters how to move discreetly, how to speak only when certain of the company, and how to read between the lines when others speak to them. The laws of the city are harshest toward women caught in the web of accusation. An unfaithful wife faces disgrace and punishment, even if her husband is indifferent or absent. Even the suspicion of impropriety can lead to ruined reputations and broken families. The woman learns to keep her own counsel, to monitor the behavior of servants, and to avoid situations that might be misunderstood. Sometimes danger comes from within. Rivalries between wives, stepdaughters, or servants can lead to betrayal and heartbreak. In the worst cases, old grievances become public quarrels, and a family's secrets spill into the street. The woman tries to maintain harmony, using small gestures of kindness to win trust and head off resentment. But she knows that peace is fragile, and that a single moment of anger can undo years of quiet work. Children, too, can bring trouble. A rebellious son or daughter may attract unwanted attention, testing the boundaries set by parents and the expectations of society. The mother counsels them as best she can, but she also learns to watch for warning signs, hoping to prevent mistakes before they turn to scandal. When a crisis erupts, the household closes ranks. Neighbors may turn away or offer only cold comfort, fearful of being drawn into another's misfortune. In these moments, the woman relies most on her closest allies, her sisters, her oldest friends, and the women who understand the cost of a whisper in the wrong ear. After the storm passes, wounds may linger. Trust is harder to rebuild than it is to lose, and reputations heal slowly, if at all. The woman moves forward with new caution, ever more skilled in the quiet arts of self-protection and discretion. She has learned that survival depends not only on hard work and care, but also on the wisdom to sense danger and the courage to endure it. One day, the rhythms of the household change forever. News comes quietly, or perhaps after a long illness, that her husband is gone. The widow faces a moment that is both an ending and a beginning. Ritual mourning shapes the days that follow as she covers her head, dons plain garments, and receives visitors who come to pay their respects. Grief settles over the home, but alongside it rises a strange sense of possibility, a space where old rules shift and new challenges emerge. At first, everything is uncertain. The question of inheritance brings distant relatives and advisors into the family's private rooms. Legal matters are discussed in hushed voices, often with little regard for the widow's wishes. She learns quickly that her security depends on her ability to read intentions, to negotiate with tact, and to find allies among those who would decide her fate. Some urge her to remarry for protection, while others warn of the risks such choices bring. Daily life continues, but now she stands at the center of every decision. If she inherits property, she must oversee its management and defend it from those who see her as weak. She becomes responsible for the well-being of children, servants, and sometimes even aging parents. With no husband to shield her, she discovers the boundaries of her own authority. Every visit to the market, every arrangement with tenants or tradesmen becomes a test of her resolve and reputation. Some days bring new strength. The widow finds comfort in bonds with other women who have faced the same loss. Together, they share stories, prayers, and practical advice for managing a household alone. These friendships become lifelines, easing loneliness and helping her face the gossip and speculation that sometimes follow a woman without a husband. Yet danger is never far. Suitors may appear, some with genuine kindness, others seeking only advantage. Family members may press her to give up her independence or to surrender property for the promise of support. Each choice carries risk, and the widow learns to balance hope with caution, trusting her instincts and the lessons hard-won through years of quiet observation. Religious devotion offers moments of solace. She may spend more time in prayer, tend to family altars, or seek guidance from temple priestesses. Some widows become patrons of local charities or join circles of women who work quietly to help the poor. Through these acts, she finds dignity and a sense of purpose, even when the world outside her door feels uncertain. Gradually, the house grows quieter. Children leave, servants age, and the seasons change again. The widow remains, shaped by her grief and her strength, carrying forward both the burdens and the freedoms that come with her new life. In this chapter, she discovers not just loss, but the possibility of self-reliance and the quiet pride of having endured. Time brings changes to the household and to the woman who now holds the honored place of matron. Her hair grows silver and her steps slow, yet her presence shapes the rhythms of daily life. Younger women look to her for guidance. Daughters-in-law and granddaughters come with questions about recipes, remedies, or the best way to quiet a quarrel. The matron sits near the hearth or in the garden, her hands busy with small tasks, her mind full of stories that reach back across the years. She is both witness and judge as new generations grow into their own responsibilities. When disagreements arise among children or relatives, she listens with patience and wisdom. Her words are measured, her advice drawn from lessons learned through hardship and hope. Sometimes she offers gentle humor to ease tension, sometimes a firm reminder of what endures when all else changes. The matron's world is smaller than it once was. The market trips grow rare, and neighbors she once laughed with are now only memories. Yet within her home, she maintains traditions that tie the past to the present. Each festival, each meal, each blessing before the shrine carries her touch. Grandchildren gather around her, wide-eyed, to hear tales of clever ancestors or warnings about forgotten mistakes. Through her voice, family history is kept alive. Loneliness sometimes creeps in during the long afternoons when the house is quiet. She tends the garden or sorts old linens, comforted by routine. In private moments, she visits the graves of those lost, leaves offerings and whispers names to the silent earth. These rituals help her honor the life she has lived and the lives that have slipped away. Her body tires more easily, and aches are answered with old remedies and new patience. She accepts the help of others with gratitude but insists on doing what she can. Small acts, plaiting a girl's hair, tying a ribbon on a gift, lighting the evening lamps become her way of nurturing the world around her. When visitors arrive, the matron welcomes them with quiet pride. She is respected as a storyteller, a keeper of wisdom, and a guardian of peace within the home. Those who listen closely hear in her stories the steady pulse of a life well lived. Even as her influence slowly passes to the next generation, her gentle authority lingers. As the days grow shorter, the matron's legacy is woven into the fabric of family life. The kindness she showed, the lessons she shared, and the strength she offered in hard times become a part of those who follow. Though her steps may slow and her voice soften, she remains the quiet heart of the home, holding memory and meaning close for all who gather near. As years slip by, the older matron spends more time in gentle contemplation. The house she once managed is now tended by younger hands. Voices from the past drift through quiet halls, memories returning in the scent of bread, the laughter of children, and the rituals that continue even when she no longer leads them. She has watched seasons change and witnessed her daughters and granddaughters take on the responsibilities she once carried with care. Often, she finds herself recalling childhood games played in shadowed alleys, the taste of festival honey cakes, and the proud moment when she first managed a household on her own. Sorrows visit her too. Friends lost, children mourned, promises broken or fulfilled in ways she never expected. With age, regrets soften into acceptance, and gratitude grows for the joys that outlast disappointment. Sitting by the window or in the patch of sunlight near the family shrine, she reflects on the chain of women whose lives have shaped her own. Her mother's quiet instruction, her grandmother's patience, the courage shown by aunts and neighbors, each memory a thread that binds the present to a larger story. She hopes the young ones listening to her tales will carry forward not just the customs, but the resilience that allowed her family to endure. Her body grows frail, and her days are marked by rest and gentle visits from loved ones. Yet even as she slows, the matron feels pride in survival. The world outside her window is always in motion, but within her there is a deep sense of peace. She knows her story is only one among countless others, most unrecorded but none unimportant. When the end comes, she is surrounded by family and the familiar rhythm of daily life. The echo of her presence lingers in the way the lamps are lit at dusk, in recipes remembered by heart, and in the careful words spoken during times of trouble. The matron's legacy is not written on monuments or in city records, but lives quietly in those who remember her kindness and strength. As dusk gathers, her story becomes a part of the city's long memory, another thread woven into the endless tapestry of Rome. Though her name may fade, her life remains within every gentle gesture, every lesson passed from mother to child, every moment of comfort found in a world too often shaped by silence.